X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain is one of the most extreme and intense roller coasters in the world. The ride was the first fourth dimension coaster when it opened in 2002, and along with still being the only custom variant on the continent, it's also still one of 3 out there in the world. A fourth dimension coaster is one whose seats have the ability to rotate 360 degrees forwards and backwards on the side of the track. So not only is X2 a super unique ride with an interesting history, but it's an absolutely insane ride experience that we'll be talking all about in today's review. X2, originally known as just X, was announced on December 19, 2000 alongside 2 other coasters, Deja Vu and Magic Flyer, then known as Goliath Jr. X would be the prototype fourth dimension coaster by Aerodynamics, a design that had never been attempted before because it was just that ambitious. So ambitious, in fact, that when Aerodynamics first presented a potential layout to Magic Mountain, the park said, no, we want it bigger because we want to solidify our stance as the thrill capital of the world. And while Aerodynamics did agree to this, it would make for an interesting fate to the manufacturer. X was set to debut in the summer of 2001, but issues during construction pushed this date back to 2002. These were the first of many problems the coaster would have, as upon opening it would seemingly be closed more than it was up. This was especially a big issue because the demand for this ride was astronomical. People from all over the world were traveling to ride this thing and see what it was like. In 2007, just 5 years after opening, X closed for a complete transformation, a move that would seek to make the ride more reliable and with the addition of special effects. Around this time, the coaster's manufacturer Aerodynamics had gone defunct, and the thing to blame would undoubtedly be X. It would be much more expensive and problematic than anticipated. While the proposed cost back in the year 2000 was never released for the attraction, we do know that Six Flags was aiming to spend $30 million on their 3 new coasters combined. X just by itself cost a staggering $45 million to complete in 2002, and then another $10 million to renovate for the 2008 season. Since the manufacturer was now defunct for the transformation, Six Flags went to SNS to develop new trains, which would be their start in understanding 4D technology for future projects like Ejinika at Fuji-Q Highland and Dinoconda at China Dinosaurs Park. In addition to heavier trains that would increase the speed a couple miles per hour, they were also equipped with an onboard audio system and a fire effect on the last fly-to-lie element. Nowadays, these only work a fraction of the time, but more on that later. In 2008, X reopened as X2, and while it still had troubling maintenance issues, it was much better off than where it was before. Since then, it has been going strong, and just this year became 2 decades old. Before talking about the ride experience, I do want to say, disclaimer, this coaster is not for the faint-hearted. It is very intense and is also quite rough by nature, so if you aren't into the utmost extreme coasters, this might not be for you. As for myself, I love stuff like this, and so X2 is one of my all-time favorite coasters I've ever been on. I'm always a back row rider on this thing as I think the whip on the elements is much more pronounced, but it's intense in any row. Also, take a note that the inside seats are usually going to be a bit smoother than the outside seats, so if you're vulnerable to motion sickness but still want to give X2 a shot, an inside seat in the front few rows will be your best bet. Upon locking your restraints, you'll notice that your seats tilt backwards to make way for the rest of the ride. Once dispatched, you roll out of the station backwards through the short 180-degree turn into the lift hill. Because of how your seats are positioned, you get one of the most stunning views on any coaster on this lift hill. Seeing the rest of Magic Mountain beneath you and the Southern California mountains hitting those sunny blue skies is gorgeous. My favorite time of year to ride X2 is in the winter months when the mountains are topped with snow and the weather is chillier, fitting the atmosphere of your surroundings better. As you near the top of the lift hill, you crest a max height of 175 feet and are tilted directly at the sky. This is very trippy if there's no clouds in sight, and you feel like you're staring into an endless blue abyss. Shortly after, you'll decline this pre-drop, which begins to tilt your seats downwards for the big 215-foot drop. Because this drop is built into the inside of a ditch, it's quite a lot taller than the coaster's general height of 175 feet. In addition, the drop is angled 88.5 degrees, so it's basically vertical, meaning you will be forced to stare down at this massive drop with nowhere to go but down. At the bottom of the drop, your seats perform a flip to get you back at a comfortable position. So believe me, this is one of the most crazy first drops in the world, especially if you're sitting towards the back and get whipped down the whole thing. Following the drop, you rocket up a massive inside Raven turn, which can be pretty rough on the way up, so be ready to brace for it. At the top, you slow down quite a bit, meaning you have a few seconds where you're just facing down at the ground. Before you can acknowledge which way is up and which way is down, you hurl downwards, building up a ton of speed before one of my favorite parts of the entire ride. During this upcoming camelback, your seats perform a full 360-degree backflip, which will absolutely throw off your perception of gravity. Then you take a slow turnaround, which is probably the weakest part of the ride for me. Granted, you're still so high in the air that the average person will still be shitting their pants, but it's definitely the one element that doesn't excite me as much anymore. That being said, it's over before you know it, and you'll start to build up speed in no time before the upcoming fly-to-lie element. This is what takes you from a forward position beneath the track to a backwards position above the track. At the bottom of this fly-to-lie, you'll be blasted with fire, at least sometimes. This is such a cool effect when it works, but it's unfortunately quite rare nowadays that you'll see it turned on, or at least both of them turns on. Sometimes it's only one side that works. Some of my favorite memories on X2, like I said, were these cold winter days at the park where fire would warm you up drastically. After this neat visual, you take your last true element, an outside Raven turn. This is absolutely demonic, and especially if you're in the back, the most intense part of the ride. You are viciously whipped downwards and don't fully land back into your seat until the following valley, which is pretty brutally rough. Most of X2 is pretty manageable for my tolerance of roughness, but this part at the end is really something else. It will violently jerk your legs forward and quickly rock them back, which might slam them onto the seat. Now, because it's such a short segment, I don't mind it as much as most people, but again, this is the kind of thing that proves that X2 is meant for a certain audience and that not everyone will like it. Just after, the train does a rotation around the track that puts you backwards on your back and into the brake run. This concludes your insane 3,600 10-foot ride on X2. So in conclusion, I think I'm going to have to give X2 a perfect 10 out of 10 for me. It is probably on the lower end of a 10 because there are sections you have to brace for, but for me personally, I think the roughness complements the chaotic ride experience, so I don't mind it too much. I completely understand why many of you probably aren't a fan of this coaster, but those of you who love it really love it, so it cancels out. For me, this is my number 6 overall roller coaster out of 445 total credits. There is nothing quite like X2 outside of Asia, and for that reason, I can't ever get enough of it. But with that being said, I'd now like to hear from you. What did you think of X2? Do you like this ride as much as I do and consider it to be the number 1 coaster at Magic Mountain, or are you the kind that maybe doesn't enjoy it as much? Let me know all of that down in the comment section below. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could take 5 seconds out of your day to like this video and subscribe, as it really helps me and the channel out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.